then I'll allow for the admission. Did you want an additional minute to respond?
Well,
For the
the
prosecution.
truth is that when the first stop was, the driver's license was valid. The first stop was, the driver's license was valid still. It was just the automobile that was not compliant.
Okay, you have about 30 more seconds if you want to add anything else.
It wasn't that my license was revoked or suspended at that time during the first stop. It was valid. I did not have it on me. I didn't produce it, but I did not lie to those police officers about anything. And we all did our job.
Okay. And that's why we're here today, is to determine whether you're guilty or not guilty. That'll be a fact issue for the jury. Any other issues for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. And so I have given, it's 8:20. We started these argument at 8:08, but then I gave Mr. Velasquez 3 minutes. Additional time. There was some issues regarding the court's advisement regarding contempt. So Mr. Velasquez, I'll give you about 10 minutes if you'd like to make a record on any pretrial issues. Go ahead. And that would be at 8:31. We will finish your argument. Thank you.
Well, I'm not arguing. I just came here to make the special appearance, and I had come in. Did anyone tell you I had came and tried to get a little more time to prepare? Did anyone tell you that it took me a lot more than a usual amount of time to get the discovery? And then I had the same issue with wanting to file over with the clerk. I couldn't do anything without violating my faith.
Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. This is the continuation of yesterday's case involving a sovereign citizen who believes the law doesn't apply to him because he follows God's laws instead. Today we're diving into his jury trial, and let's just say, it doesn't go the way he was expecting. The original footage is over 4 hours long and includes a lot of silence and slow moments, so I've trimmed it down to around an hour of the most important and interesting parts I'll point out throughout the video where certain sections were cut and explain why. Now, the stream picks up about 10 minutes into the pre-trial proceedings where the prosecution is trying to admit some body cam footage, and as expected, the defendant immediately objects. So with that said, let's jump right in.
So when I couldn't do anything and commit blasphemy at the same time. I mean, I still don't understand what code we're using. What code are we using to make me go against my faith? What law what code are we using to create an altered version of my name, and other than the way it's supposed to be properly written? I've come here every time, and if I had more time to prepare, I would have better questions for you right now. But I didn't come here to make accusations. I didn't come here to make arguments. I came here just to clear my name, and that's all I ever came here for. And I've said the same thing to all the judges, and maybe I said it. I should have come in a different way, or said it in a different way, or talked to someone privately. And I did engage with a bunch of people before anything ever proceeded the first time, and tried to work something out before I became an embarrassment or a belligerent, or I still don't comprehend how I wound up being pro se in Latin when we're reading and writing in English. And if you don't understand Latin and can I ask why we use Latin and English on one document? That's my question. I don't have anything against the judicial system or lawyers or the police. I haven't hurt anyone. There's no one coming forward to say that I'd hurt them and I did anything, even if it was someone saying he's uninsured or whatever. If they were affected by an uninsured driver, that person is still not coming forward. And I really don't understand how they can be a defendant and the people at the same time. How did they do that? I'm confused. But all I can do is ask questions. I'm not here to poke at people. I'm not here to say, you need to tell me your personal business. You need to tell me why you were doing this and why you were doing that. I was going to the store to get a part for my mother's dryer. That's the reason I had to get over all the way in that lane, is because the appliance store is on that side of the street. I did not know he was behind me until I was in the parking lot out of my car. And at that point, I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm trying to get in there before the store closes. That's all I was trying to do. And that store was, if I would went to a different store that was open, I would have got in. That store closed right at 4:30 or 4. That's when I was there trying to get that part to fix the dryer, to wash the clothes. I wasn't out working for Domino's Pizza or delivering cement or anything engaged with being employed to operate. And even at that point, I had returned my license, like I told you many times. So I was not a volunteered driver. I unvolunteered and said, way before it was suspended, I returned the license. And I'm not trying to say anything other than I have never lied to you. I've never made up a story. I was offered a deal and I would have to lie. And I don't want to go against my faith. So whatever we have to do, I mean, if you already know that I'm going to lose and I'm going to be taught a lesson and I'm going to spend this long in jail, then it's never going to be a fair trial. It would be a serious waste of time, and an embarrassment.
That sounds more like an issue on your end. Plenty of Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists have gone through trial proceedings without it ever conflicting with their faith to present a defense or argue their case. So maybe it's your personal belief that laws don't apply to you that's actually causing the problem here. Next voice 2. At this point, we're well past anything productive being said. I agree that sovereign citizen arguments tend to waste court time and resources, but in the end, the legal system still has to deal with them properly like any other case.
If you just want to, at this point, I don't have trust or faith in moving forward, because just based on what my interpretation of I don't think it's a wrong interpretation of the federal definitions of what driving is, motor vehicle is, a person is. I just don't want to. I am not those. I am none of those. And I don't see how I could be forced to identify as that and forced to sign something that puts me back in commerce. I was staying out of commerce and not interfering with commerce and trying to rebuild my life and make everyone whole in my life and fix everything that the last time I was in court affected. And so I'm not trying to avoid justice. I'm not trying to avoid doing what's right at all. And I wouldn't. I don't think it's, revenge does not satisfy me. And I've told you from the very beginning that I did not come here to ruin anybody's life or anybody's day. I just wanted to clear my name because it's a good name, and that is really all I have. That's all anyone has. And my reputation is being affected by this, and my mother's health is affected by this, but I'm not lying to her. I'm not like going home and saying, these guys, I'm saying the principle of the thing, she's doing her job and she believes. I've told everybody this. You may never have heard it, but I've told everybody. I know you're doing your job. I know you do good things. I've seen all these people who can't govern themselves, and it's dangerous. And they need to fear the sword that you wield. for good reason. And I understand all of that. And I wasn't coming to the state and saying that they owed me anything either. I was just saying, I just want to fix my name. And they didn't respond, so I had to take it upon myself, and not to take the law into my own hands, but to take my life in my own hands and say, how did I get in this situation? How did I get in that situation? It's my fault. If anything's wrong with my life in the situations, it's my fault. God is good. God didn't let me down. I'm not depressed. My life is still full of joy, regardless of what goes on. And I'm neutral. I'm not on anyone's side because I have to care about everyone's final destination more than who's right or who's wrong. I can see why they're right. I can see why you're right, and I can see why I'm right. And I can't understand why the other three men and women in this courtroom can't seem to agree, all seem to agree together before we bring in the public, before my good name gets any more tarnished.
Like I said, we're well past that point. And if you're in a courtroom where the judge, the jury, and everyone else is seeing things completely differently than you are, then there's a pretty common saying that fits here. If everyone in a room is seeing it one way, it might be worth considering that you're the one getting it wrong.
I don't know how to obtain any proof of a token of identity, or not identity, but just a proof that would prove my faith is harmless to law enforcement in case they encountered me while I was out doing my ministry. I seriously have attempted to, because I understand that it is your occupation to take care of this country and the people that live here. And
You have 30 more seconds.
I respect that. Man to man, or however you would take it most respectfully. But I just believe that we are the same. We are the same. These accusations and I don't have the intent. But I apologize for wasting your time, and I apologize that I took it this far. And in the time that I've been in your courtroom, I've seen enough to know that, you do need to stand up like you do, and you do need to do it like you do. But in this one case, where a man has done nothing but his due diligence to try to correct it, in this one case, I'm innocent.
So you have a right to trial. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you another minute just to make any record, because you mentioned a continuance. So I want to ask you what those grounds for the continuance is, and then I'll ask for the prosecution's response.
I don't need it. I was just trying to be more prepared, but really, I didn't come here to ever cause controversy. I just handled it the way that I handled it, honestly and truthfully, without, because I am born again. I know firsthand when I was born. I know my date of nativity. I know who my father is. I know that I have to, in order to encourage others to have a conscience, or show them that they can have a conscience that guides their decisions, I have to be a good example for that. And it's not against the government. It's not against the police. It's just against the principle of, in my situation, I just want to be who God made me to be. And I don't understand. I was just pulled over because I looked suspicious. If I didn't look suspicious, if there was a way that the state could make me not look suspicious,
Okay.
I don't think we'd have a problem.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify, because some of your statements sounded like you wanted to plead guilty today to the charges, but then other statements were saying you're not guilty. So I just want to be clear that you're ready to proceed to trial today, or are you asking to plead guilty to the charges? Now, I'm not asking you to violate any of your morals, but I just need to make sure that that's clear before we're about to go get 18 people to come
Yeah.
up here and hear this trial. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that you're ready to proceed, and that those are just employees with the court.
Okay, can I don't know. I would have to lie.
Don't do that. Lying in court is called perjury, and it can lead to additional criminal charges, further damage to your reputation, and the possibility of fines or jail time.
It looks like the prosecution is proceeding on 3 charges, and that is driving without a valid driver's license, expired plates, and operating an uninsured vehicle. And is that correct? You proceeding on all 3? Okay. I'll give 15 minutes for jury selection for each side. So we went through an extensive record previously about the process for trial, so I'm not going to go over that again. But I am going to allow for each side to have 15 minutes to speak to the jury. I'll give each side a 2-minute warning once they are in the for each of the things that you'll be speaking to on those times. So 2-minute warning for the voir dire or the jury selection. I'll give 10 minutes for opening, and I'll give a 1-minute warning for that. And then I will give if we're starting closings before 4 o'clock, I think it's a pretty simple case. I'm going to give 10 minutes for closing argument for each side. And again, I'll give a 1-minute warning for that. So for jury selection, you'll exercise your 3 peremptories. So you can excuse a juror, and I'll explain this as we go forward. But you'll get do you all have seating charts?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll get you a seating chart, and you'll exercise your peremptories with the people that are called the presumptive panel. So if they're the 1 through 6, if everyone's happy with 1 through 6, those are the people that are going to be on our jury. But for each peremptory, if someone exercise a peremptory, for example, if they kick number 6, then number 7 will be on our presumptive panel. So you can either accept as situated or use your peremptory. We go back and forth until either party has exhausted their peremptories or has accepted as situated. I can answer questions about that procedure once you see it. And so I think that is the court's. I do not allow for long speaking objections, so you can say objection hearsay, objection expert testimony. If it requires a bench conference, then you can ask for a bench conference, although if we need to move the trial along, I may decline to have a bench conference. What I will tell you is that at every break, I give you an opportunity to make that record, so that additional record will be deemed contemporaneous from the point that you have made that objection. All right, are there any questions for the prosecution? I'll give you 2 minutes for questions.
None from the people, Your Honor.
Any questions for Andrew, for the defense? I'll give you 2 minutes.
When I object, if I object, is it interrupting? No?
So if there is something that you believe is coming out at trial that you need to object to, you can stand up and say objection. You can then I guess if someone's testifying to something and in the middle of a sentence, you can say objection, and then I'll give you a chance. But if I'm ruling on something, we don't interrupt each other. If the attorneys are speaking, we don't interrupt each other. But you are allowed to stand up and say objection. Any other questions? You have about 1 more minute.
I didn't get any evidence submitted, so I can't submit anything, right?
This is trial, and that's where you would submit your evidence is at trial. So you would have to lay the foundation, what we call foundation under the rules of evidence, as to the evidence that you would like presented. So you would show a copy of whatever you'd like to provide to the jury, and then the prosecution would have a chance to look at it. And then if you would have to have a witness with personal knowledge to be able to admit that document, unless there's exceptions, like a certified document, there's rules that would allow for that. So today is the date that you would present any evidence. So what will happen is once the prosecution has presented their evidence, we talked about the process for trial previously. After they rest, that would be the time that you would call any witnesses or you would testify. I would swear you in at that time, and I have an advisement for you at that time.
So if I had some printed evidence that I wasn't able to submit for the record, I go about,
So
I could
again,
talk about it.
if you want to talk about your evidence and what you'd like to, it depends on the strategy that you'd have. If you want to wait to the moment that you can try and admit it, ultimately, someone has to lay what's called a foundation or the proper foundation for that it's authenticated and that there's a rule of evidence that would allow for it. So you can attempt to admit it, and then it would be there for the record if it's not admitted, but that's kind of the process.
Okay, so should I just try it now?
You have to, we're not in trial.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's during trial. You can show the prosecution, and then we can take up at the break after we choose a jury if there's any objections to that. But at this point, we're not in trial. So trying to submit anything, unless you have to have the trial going before
What
we
if I
submit it.
quote something and I know the source? I can quote the source and.
It depends on under the
Or
rules
is
of
that,
evidence.
or is that hearsay?
It depends on if there's an exception to the rule of hearsay or if that's hearsay, that it's not hearsay. So we'll just have to wait in trial, and then I'll make those rulings.
So now that the pretrial warm-up is done, it's time to bring the jury in. They move into the standard juror introductions, where each person briefly shares a bit about themselves, basically setting the groundwork so both sides can start shaping their ideal panel. The process kicks off with the prosecution and defense introducing themselves first, and the defense actually has a pretty funny moment during their intro.
So could the parties please stand and introduce yourselves to the jury, please?
Morning, all. My name is Andrew Eads,
I'm Coleman Entry.
and it's our honor to represent the people of the state of Colorado.
Thank you.
Good day. I am Andrew. My middle name is Lawrence. The surname of my father that I was issued at my time of birth without my consent is blasphemy to my religion.
Next, they move on to each side, getting about 10 minutes to question the juror pool. I cut out the prosecution's part because A, they're using a mic that barely picks up half of what's being said, and B, the questions were pretty standard anyway. Things like whether anyone thinks having a driver's license is pointless, and why states issue licenses in the first place. That I did keep the defense's questioning, though, because it really shows why someone completely uninformed probably shouldn't be representing themselves in a jury trial.
We'll ask questions of everyone. I'll need to swear everyone in. And so please raise your right hand. And do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law to answer truthfully the questions asked by the court or counsel concerning your service as a juror in this case? If you agree, please say I do. Okay, thank you. All right, next we're going to begin the question.
Object. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. You object?
Shouldn't they say, I do hereby solemnly swear, so that I know that when they say do hereby, that means that they are going to obey that oath from now until they're done judging me, and that it doesn't mean if I say I do solemnly swear, that doesn't mean like when you feel like it, because it hasn't taken effect. It's like occasionally I do.
That's not a
solemnly
requirement under the law. So
but the word hereby.
I'll let you make an additional break at the record
The word-
or at the additional record at the break, but that I'm going to overrule your objection. That's not a requirement under the law. Okay, thank you.
We can't just include it real quick for.
No, well, I explained previously, if you want to make any additional record, sometimes I need to rule during trial, but I'll allow you an additional during the breaks. You can always supplement your record, and that additional record will be deemed contemporaneous for the purposes of appeal.
Am I correct, though, about how the oath takes effect like that?
So I'm not going to argue back and forth. I've overruled your objection.
We might all have a different definition of driving. Would we all agree to that? Like your definition of driving may be different than the code of that the federal regulations of the government uses may be different than your definition of it. No, nobody agrees with me? Federal definition of driver means any person. Was that a man or a woman? Any person who operates any commercial vehicle. We all said that we drove here, but do you have your logbook with you? And who did you work for when you drove here? It is commercial. And I know that you think this guy is out there being unsafe or anything like that. No, I'm just a Christian. I'm trying to correct my identity and how people know me. I want them to know me as an honest, truth-telling Christian. And if a driver is a person, I can't identify as that because I'm a man. I'm not a corporation. Corporation, that would be a confusion of what I need to define things by. Does anybody not believe that we don't need to know the definitions of something before we know what we're talking about? The definition of operator, see driver. Is this, so did we get, does anybody think that we are now standing on moral ground to where I just defined this, or they just defined that it was commercial? That means you're getting paid. You are getting paid as a driver. What's the other option? If you are driving cattle, you are getting paid to ride that horse. But if you're just riding a horse, you're still in control of that horse, but you're not getting paid. If you are driving if you are going to the store in your automobile, are you getting paid? So are you driving federally or by the state's standards of? I agree that everybody who drives a dump truck and all that stuff and is doing a business and is driving on the streets, that's what they need to do. They federally need to have some insurance in case they get in an accident because they're out there making money. They're involved.
Andrew, you need to make sure you're speaking into the
The
mic.
federal definitions, I did not make them up. I didn't write the Bible, but this is their Bible. And I'm saying if you're going to make a decision about whether or not I was driving or whether or not I needed insurance, I assure you, I have never driven for anybody for at least 10 years. And when I did, I did pass the test and everybody should pass that test to prove that they can, so to speak. Have you ever cycle? Have you ever drove a motorcycle? Have you ever ridden a bicycle? Did you ever drive a bicycle? Have you ever ridden a skateboard? If you have a driver's license and it was issued to you by the state, you volunteered to get that. Nobody forced you to get that, but you're a driver and you're not getting paid for it. Who are you driving for? Who's your employer? Who gave you the right to do it? Who made it so that you had to pay for insurance so that you would have to? Oh, I can't, if I don't go to work today, I won't be able to pay my insurance. And if I can't pay my insurance, then I can't operate the car. And if I can't operate the car, then I'm going to lose my job. To have insurance because your birth certificate was set up so that if you had an accident, that was an accident.
Andrew, that's your time.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yep, he's in trouble. Normally, you ask jurors questions, either as a group or individually, and then wait for their answers. What you definitely don't do is launch into a diatribe about your own delusional belief system. At this point, the judge excuses the jurors and asks each side whether they'll be making an opening statement.
This is my time, right?
Yes.
So my opening statement is, to illustrate the corpus delicti, the body of the crime, the body material substance of the crime that I committed. If I was a driver, if I wasn't a driver, did I commit a crime? I wasn't getting paid. There would be, like, the corpse of a murdered man is corpus delicti. There would be a victim. I would surrender my rights to be a Christian if there was an injured party or if I had damaged someone and made someone whole, or to make them whole again. In this case, the mens rea is a guilty mind, a guilty wrongful purpose, a criminal intent. Really, I was on 44th and I turned on a Kipling and I merged over 2 lanes to get into Jensen Appliance to get a part for my mother's dryer. But was I driving? Did they say he was, will they say I was driving badly? They'll say I was driving. They'll keep saying it, and they'll say the law of the state of Colorado, ignorance of the law is no excuse. The law is pretty easy. Don't hurt anybody. Stay on your own property and don't steal anything. That's the law. And if you're ignorant of that, there's no excuse. There is no excuse. But if you're ignorant of facts, like the definition of driver, that's a fact. That's not an opinion. It's not my opinion. Nor did I invent it. It's been there for a long, long time. They have something else. We have all these Latin terms so that we can decide who's, because, Latin is a prestigious language. It's not written as Latin. It's written like it's English. There's 3 kinds of Latin in the law dictionary. You've got congruent Latin and lawyer's Latin, and then a Latin that's so confusing that only the oldest lawyer can read it. Only the oldest lawyer can tell you what it is, and that's the definition of it in the dictionary for that I did not bring. I brought the Webster's dictionary because I figured God wouldn't make it so difficult for someone to find their salvation. You'd need the words, but if you didn't know the meaning of the words, you'd have to look them up. Otherwise, you might make up your own meanings for those words and your own ideologies and your own superstitions. And you're like, if you leave that house and get in that car and you don't have your driver's license, you're a bad person, or you're a bad man or a bad woman, or you're doing something that's wrong. The federal definition of it says that if you are engaged in commerce, you have to have a driver's license. Does it say in the federal code of regulations that if you're just going to the store, you have to have a driver's license? People aren't aware that there's lots of terms inside the code of federal regulations, like private motor carrier for hire, private motor carrier with more than 12 passengers and stuff like that.
Well, unfortunately for you, this isn't a federal case. This is a state case. So those definitions and statutes don't apply to your current situation.
And also people don't understand that, how to grammatically read and write English. I have, copies that from the Chicago Styles Manual, 17th edition, which tells you that what an acronym is, how to write a proper name properly, how to write a corporation, how to write American Sign Language, because American Sign Language is written in all capital letters because they don't have any lowercase letters. And it's like Latin, that they join the words together with like a dash or a period, but there is no direct translation between American Sign Language and English. Those 2 words, if you see American Sign Language and English on the same piece of paper, like a contract, those words don't mix together. There is no nexus of the mind for someone who doesn't speak the other language to sign with full consent and full knowledge that they've fully been disclosed everything, if part of it they don't understand, but they're just trusting the other person, just trusting them, some stranger. Well, I say it is, I can read it just fine, but this will tell you that if you wanted to write something in all capital letters, there's an acronym. And if you know what an acronym is, it's like NAFTA or UNICEF. You turn a word into, you turn a bunch of words of a title into one word, and then you write that in all capital letters. And the fact that it's written in all capital letters, that is for an English reader to determine how to decode what this communication is saying. There's, with respect to corporations, the Styles Manual. The Styles Manual tells you how to write everything. It is like the Bible or the Webster's Dictionary or a law dictionary. These are authorized sources that have authority. I didn't go and say, I heard this and I heard that. I do not like hearsay. I do not like rumors. When everyone pretty much admitted to not being religious. So I'm going to talk about the religion of Catholicism for a minute, because it relates to, a baby is born and it has two sponsors, a godmother and a godfather, and they baptize that baby into the religion. And it's like that. But did that baby say, oh yeah, I want to be a Catholic? Because in my faith, you would have to believe first and then be baptized, because it is not the action that saves you, it's the faith. It's the faith that motivates you. It's the belief in, my uncle, if I talk to him about what I think, he says it's superstition. And that really got me going. It was like, well, how much of what you believe is a superstition when it comes to not disobeying the law, but obeying the law, And I know that I obeyed the law. I know that I obeyed the code of the federal regulations. I know that I'm not lying to you. You may not believe it, but that doesn't mean it's not true. There's no reason for me to come here repeatedly. I've come here and there was a point where I was going to have to go for a competency evaluation, and I didn't want to do it. I thought that, competency evaluation, you're asking me to testify against myself. I don't want to do that.
You have 1 minute.
I want to submit myself to a medical examination or a scientific experiment. Where's the law? Because I'm not claiming to be an American. I'm saying that if Americans can enjoy the Fifth Amendment and not have to testify against themselves, can a Christian in America not have to testify against themselves, not have to condemn themselves?
Absolutely. The Fifth Amendment right to remain silent applies to everyone, citizen or non-citizen, religious or atheist. It exists for a reason. You're simply choosing not to exercise it. With that said, the jury was brought back in, and now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of the trial. The prosecution's first witness, the officer who conducted the traffic stop. I've cut out the more technical parts of his testimony, but left in the body cam audio that was played in court.
All right, officer, if you want to come up here, I can swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. And just make sure you're speaking directly into that microphone, and that chair is not on wheels, so you have to kind of scoot it. The easiest thing to do is just move the microphone back and forth. Thank you. All right, and go ahead, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Officer Reeds. Would you please state your full name and spell your last for the jury?
Sure. Donovan Reetz, Reetz.
I object. That's hearsay, isn't it?
It is a thumb drive containing a portion of my body-worn camera from that interaction.
How do you know that?
I previously reviewed it earlier today.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of that body-worn camera footage?
Correct.
Your Honor, permission to admit and publish People's Exhibit 3.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 3?
Sure. I object. It makes me look combative, and the issue I thought was whether the accusation is whether I'm driving without insurance, not how I'm acting. Did you have a problem with how I acted? Did you want to write?
So you'll have a chance, you'll have a chance to ask questions. I'm just going to find, based on the court's previous ruling, but also that the proper authentication has been laid to authenticate a video. I'm relying on a case, People in Interest of MV 432 Pacific 3rd 628. It's called a Supreme Court case from 2018. So they've laid the proper, what we call authentication foundation. And then based on the record, there have been previously objections to hearsay, but based on the court's understanding of what has been admitted, it would be what's called a party opponent, statements made by Andrew. And so I will allow for the admission. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm glad we did this.
Are you? Why is that? Get it all cleared up?
Well, because if I need a driver's license plate to move around, then they should give me one because I wasn't born with it. And if I have to get a job and volunteer and use that last name to get one, that makes me a slave.
Okay.
You know, and if I'm their slave, then that's illegal.
Did you take this to mean that the defendant did not have proper registration and driver's plates?
Correct.
Why did you believe that?
Just based off of the statements, it indicated to me that he did not believe he had to register his vehicle unless it was provided to him by the state or some other entity.
At any point, did you ask the defendant if he had a driver's license?
I did, yes.
And how did he respond?
He stated he did not have a driver's license.
I'd like to turn your attention to Marcus Peoples Exhibit 4. This is the other video we showed you earlier this morning. Commissioner, approach, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you.
Another segment of my body-worn camera from that day's interaction.
How do you know that?
I previously reviewed it.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that body-worn camera interaction?
It is, yes.
Permission to admit and publish People's Exhibit 4, Your Honor.
Any objection for the defense? You're shaking your head no? Okay.
Okay. Do you have your license on you?
I don't have a license.
Okay. Will you?
At any point, did the defendant produce a license?
No, sir.
And at any point, did you ask the defendant if he had valid and current proof of insurance?
I did, yes.
And how did he reply?
He stated he did not have any proof of insurance.
I'd like to turn your attention to Marcus Peoples Exhibit 5. This is the other video we showed you this morning. Permission to approach, Your Honor.
You may.
Another section of my body-worn camera.
How do you know that?
I reviewed it this morning.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of that body-worn camera?
It is, yes.
Permission to admit and publish People's Exhibit 5, Your Honor.
Any objection for the defense?
No.
Okay. People's Exhibit 5 will be admitted, and the court relies on the previous record as well. Go ahead.
Mr. Easley, please play People's Exhibit 5.
Do you have insurance on your car, sir?
My birth certificate is my insurance.
In the state of Colorado, is a birth certificate valid insurance?
No, sir, it is not.
How do you know that?
Pursuant to Colorado statute, anybody operating a motor vehicle on a roadway in Colorado must have valid insurance through an insurance company.
You spoke with the defendant a fair amount on March 26, 2024, correct?
Yes.
What rationale or arguments did the defendant give as to why he did not need to comply with these laws?
He repeatedly stated that they were fraudulent. When I issued him the summons for this incident, he stated it was fraudulent as well. He denied his, I believe it was his last name as a legal name, and that he only identified as his Christian name of Andrew. Just various statements along the lines of those.
To your understanding, does having a driver's license, proof of insurance, or license plates have anything to do with people's First Amendment rights to religion?
No, sir, they do not.
And you've been an officer for how long?
I'm in my 8th year now, sir.
And roughly how many tickets have you given for any of those 3 offenses that we're here upon today?
Probably in the several hundreds, sir.
And were any of those tickets found fraudulent?
No, sir.
No further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Pretty straightforward. He admitted he didn't have a license, insurance, or registration, what I like to call the traveler's trifecta. But with that said, let's take a look at the defense's cross-examination.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, do you have any questions for this witness? I think we've gone over this before, but I just want to make sure that you're within the bounds of the rules of evidence. So it has to be a form of a question. And so if you would like to testify, it'd be at a later point in the trial. You also have to have it relevant to the day in question. And so I'll just give you those. I think I've explained that before, but just make sure you're within the bounds. That sometimes when someone's not represented, the type of questions that they ask that could kind of end their cross-examination if they're not within the bounds of evidence, rules of evidence. So do you have any questions for this officer?
I do.
Okay.
Good day. It's good to see you again. No hard feelings. And I think
Officer.
by the time we got there, we were friends, or not friends, but, you know, not enemies. And so what's your definition of a motor vehicle?
So it's a vehicle that's self-propelled, driving on any public roadways in the state of Colorado.
What's your definition of a driver?
Person in immediate control of the vehicle that's operating the vehicle.
How about an operator?
Roughly the same definition as a driver. They're synonymous.
Now, if what's the caliber of your weapon and how many bullets do you carry?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Okay, well, if at the time when we had our interaction, if at that time I was a Uber driver with a passenger, would the charges be different?
Objection, relevance.
Would the charges be different?
Okay,
That's the relevance
so
of it.
that what you're asking the officer to do is kind of speculate, and we have
Oh.
to focus on the day in question of what this case is relevant to. So the facts of this case. So I will sustain that objection.
Okay, that day in question, do you have the logbook for my employer that I was allegedly working for as a driver?
Objection, speculation, and relevance.
I'll allow for that question. Go ahead.
Did you obtain any evidence that day that indicated to you that I was employed by somebody at the time that we had our interaction that was paying me money to not operate, but to be in control of that car?
No, sir, I did not.
Do you think I was surprised when I saw you?
Objection, relevance.
I guess I'll allow for his testimony regarding his observations.
In your memory of it, and you saw the video, and from what you remember, was I surprised when I saw you?
Yes, you did appear surprised.
And did you draw your weapon?
Objection, relevance.
Because I don't see the relevance of. I will allow for the question of whether there was a weapon drawn, just regarding the circumstances of.
But he says I'm like walking away. So, and then I read that in your report is that you saw that it looked to you like I was not trying to, I wasn't listening to you, but I wasn't aware of you. And at that, a moment, is it on your call, you get a warrant to arrest somebody who's allegedly driving. Are they dangerous? Or, I just don't understand. I don't.
You're gonna have to put that in one
let-
question.
oh.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make you look bad. So, let's just go over it. There was no indication that I was working for somebody at the time. And there's, the weight of the vehicle is it considered, commercial by its weight?
No, sir.
Okay. I believe that you believe you're telling me the truth, and I'm done asking questions.
Yeah, I believe he's telling the truth as well, especially since it was all confirmed by the body cam footage played in court. After the officer finished testifying, the jury was excused so the court could finalize the jury instructions. That's when the defendant decided to jump in again, attempting to argue his quantum grammar points and disputing the definitions of terms like person and motor vehicle.
Okay. The one other, under the law, it says driver means every person, including a minor driver under the age of 21 years who drives or is in actual physical control of a vehicle. Any objection to the court's instructions with this addition for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Any objection for the defense to any of the instructions that I've provided, including this new addition? I provided you a copy of the instructions previously, but this is a new addition.
Will they be able to see the definition of person and vehicle?
So there would be a motor vehicle definition. I don't know if there is under the law a definition of person under the Colorado law.
Person, by definition, makes it commercial.
I don't think that under Colorado law, unless is the prosecution familiar with a definition of person? Let me look at the model jury
You can
instructions.
look, yes.
It's in the Constitution, isn't it? Right, the Colorado Constitution?
Let me see. I'm looking at 42.102 for the definitions under the traffic code. There is not a definition under as far as person. It's hard to search the definition of person because there's in the model jury instructions, there is about 3,500 uses of the term person just in all of the statutes or the law. Let me see if I can look it up in the definitions. And then under the model jury instructions, I'm looking up the definitions that they've included.
I'm taking a look, I believe, on Colorado Revised Statutes 2-4-401. Might provide a little bit of information here. For general statutory interpretation, person includes individuals, corporations, government agencies, and other legal entities. So yes, while it does include corporations or government agencies or other entities such as that, it also does include individuals in that definition.
Define individuals.
So there's a definition of person under the homicide statute. Person, when referring to the victim of homicide, means a human being who had been born and was alive at the time of the homicidal act. But I don't see that there is a specific definition of person.
Human being isn't a man or a woman. A human being, I have my Webster's dictionary.
Well, despite the tasty ink, maybe you should check a dictionary before you start chewing on the pages, because according to Webster's dictionary, a human being is defined as a bipedal primate mammal, essentially a person. So that argument doesn't really hold up.
I think that when there's not specific definitions for let me just confirm, I want to make sure that I'm making this clear because I just looked up the person's definition under homicide, which I don't think is relevant here.
It's going to be
There's a person for
the very beginning of the Constitution.
Yeah, I don't see that there's a person definition under the traffic code. So there's definitions of other, like that means an individual corporation. That doesn't make sense for this traffic code. And person includes corporate officers. That doesn't make sense. So if the jury has any questions about the definition of a person, I would direct them to their common knowledge of the word. But it's not defined under the traffic code, so I'm going to decline to give that. Do you have any other objections to these instructions?
I'm trying to track what you just said.
So under the law, there are specific definitions that sometimes relate to a specific charge. So in the model jury instructions, which are instructions that are provided to courts of what to do during trial to instruct the jury, There is a definition of a persons for controlled substance offenses. This isn't a controlled substance offense. There's a definition of person for a homicide offense. This isn't a homicide. And I think it would be confusing for the jury if we inserted one of these instructions, that definitions that don't relate to the actual charge. So I've done a search into the traffic offenses, and 42.1.102 has some traffic definitions, but none of them apply to the definition of person. So when that happens, then if the jury has questions about what the definition of a person is, then they would be instructed during their deliberations to rely on their common meaning or interpretation of that word. Do you have any other record on these instructions that you'd like to make?
These are legal codes. There's going to be a legal definition for it. If it's not related to this, then why don't we use the person definition instead of leaving my fate up to something other than what the law or the codes, revised statutes say?
Let's be clear. You left your fate up to whatever website you found all this sovereign citizen nonsense on.
I understand that, but adding corporation to it is going to be confusing to the jury. The other.
That's what it is.
Not for this charge. I don't believe it has to be a person. So
even the general definition of person is a mask. It's a persona. It's something that somebody portrays. And so
I understand your objection. I'm going to overrule your objection. Do you have any other objections to these instructions?
yes, because if they can't clearly define what a person is, and it takes it away from being commercial, then I don't think it's accurate for the jury to do that. In all my experience with the definition of person, it is never. If it was a man or a woman, it would be interpreted a man or a woman. In the state of Colorado, wanted to write, if a man or a woman did this, they would write that. But they wanted to write it as person. So because it has a meaning, it has a definite meaning, and it has the meaning of commercial.
For the prosecution, what's your position? I know you offered that in that definition, but what is your position?
Your Honor, ultimately, we would note that 24-4-401 does note the following definitions apply to every statute unless the context otherwise requires. Amongst those is a definition for person. In this case, it would be subsection 8, means any individual, corporation, government, or governmental subdivision or agency, business, trust, estate, limited liability company, partnership, association, or other legal entity. I think that's a very long-winded way of saying that it is just inclusive of individuals. I don't think it is necessarily needed. I think the common sense.
It is absolutely needed.
So,
This is the law.
Hold on. Are you asking the court to, if the prosecution's requesting it, I will include it. But I just need to make clear what the record is. So you're reading me it, but I need to get your position.
Yes, ultimately, if the people won't object to inclusion of that, just the definition section.
Okay. All right.
What's wrong with the federal definition of it?
Well, you're not facing a federal charge. You're facing a state charge. So the court isn't applying UCC definitions here, even though those also define a person as an individual. In other words, you're not going to win this case by trying to obscure or debate federal versus state definitions.
So this is where I think we're opening up things to the request because it's not defined. But if the prosecution is requesting this instruction, I'll give person means an individual, corporate, business, trust, estate, trust, partnership, associate. But that doesn't make sense under the context of driving. That's the part where it's my job to make sure that the jury is instructed properly. The prosecution said they don't object to the person means an individual, corporation, business, trust, estate, trust, partnership, association, joint venture, government or governmental subdivision or agency, or any other legal or commercial entity based on that request. I'm not going to go into the federal law for a definition of person. So I'm going to decline that request. But the prosecution said they don't object to this person. I think it's confusing to the jury, but it's if both parties are asking for that definition, then I'll include it. Any other requests for these instructions?
Your Honor, I do, ultimately, I do think it actually does create a lot of confusion. I think ultimately people would object to the inclusion of that person definition there. Ultimately, it only really presents one piece of relevance, which would be the individual, but there's a lot of other agencies, divisions, corporations, associations that are reflected in there, and I think it just ends up creating needless confusion here.
So
No way.
a business entity cannot physically drive a vehicle. So I am going to decline to give a definition of person. This will be a purpose for appeal if you feel that this was a mistake. I do just find that what is added in this instruction is, and that's model jury instruction F26-8, and it's related to controlled substance offenses. It talks about a business trust in the state. That is not, it does not in the common sense definition of what a driver means, that a partnership or a government cannot drive a vehicle. So I'm going to find that if the prosecution has questions of what a person is, then they would be directed to their common understanding, but I'm going to decline to include the definition of person.
No.
All right, Andrew, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to make any other argument regarding these instructions, and then we can go to numbering them. So go ahead, you have till 11:44.
Well, I'm going to object to changing to a code that suits your purpose, or suits their purpose. It's ambiguous and misleading.
You basically just laid out exactly what you're trying to argue in this trial. Still, the judge isn't going to let things get sidetracked or confuse the jury by entertaining your definition of what a person is. Originally, he said he planned to testify in his own defense, and I was honestly expecting him to take the stand. But after the break, he changed his mind and ultimately decided not to testify.
All right, thank you. The parties, please be seated. Prior to the break, the prosecution rests. Keeping in mind the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The defense does not have to present any evidence. Do you wish to call any witnesses?
I have none.
You have none. Okay. So at this time, does the defense rest?
Resting.
Okay.
Guilty, guilty, and guilty. Now, let's hear what his punishment is. Next voice, 17. So that ends with a $650 fine and 3 days in jail, which he already served, all for something that could have been avoided by just having insurance, registration, and a driver's license. You know, the basic stuff most of us already handle without thinking twice. That's the end of the video. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you haven't seen the first part yet, definitely go check that out, because it's got its own dose of sovereign-level confusion. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If not, hit dislike, but either way, feel free to leave a comment below and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss the next one.
Apologize for the way things started.
Okay.
And it wasn't very becoming of who I want to be seen as.
Okay. Thank you. Are you still driving then? You're not driving. Okay. Here's my concern is, there's people just like you that are working a day-to-day job that can have a car that barely runs, are scraping together insurance, and they are going to be in a bad situation if you're driving and you hit them, because they might have just insurance that if they hit someone, and then someone might be able to not have their car to get to their job, get their kids to daycare, and they don't have anyone to pay that insurance, that money. And you seem like the type of person that takes into consideration the suffering of others in the world. And if you live by your faith, then you would understand that one of our jobs is to make sure that we don't create suffering in other people. So I think that you have sort of a legal objection at times to having insurance, but I hope that you understand that that could affect someone that's just like you, or a single mother, or all of these things. And so I hope that you take that into consideration when you're going forward today. Because you don't have any prior no proof of insurance, you've already served 3 days in jail in this case for failure to comply with the competency evaluation. So I'm not going to impose any additional jail. And because this is your first conviction for no proof of insurance, you have a mandatory minimum of a $500 fine. And so I will impose that mandatory minimum $500 fine in count 1. And the no valid operator's license, I will impose a $100 fine. And then count 3, the expired plates, that's a $50 fine. So I am imposing quite a bit of fine on you, but I'm not going to impose any jail at this time. So you can set up a payment plan. Any appeal needs to be filed within 35 days of today's date of the court's decisions in this trial. But I hope that you are able to get your license, abide by the law. I'll tell you that the driving without a valid driver's license does take with it a maximum sentence of 90 days in jail. So if this pattern continues, or if you don't have insurance, there used to be a time in this building where someone on a 4th of no proof of insurance, they would get sentenced to a year in jail. So the legislature has given the courts power to do that, but I hope that you just are licensed and that you have your insurance so that your choices aren't affecting other people. So we can give you that information in just a moment. All right, good luck. Thank you.